I'm so glad you're here for NPA's Brain Builders Book Club. Today's conversation is going to be Dr. Wendy Suzuki's Good Anxiety book. This is Wendy's second book, and I honestly think anybody and everyone should read this book. It is so helpful, and it's such a basic and simple understanding that I think it will help everyone. So, welcome. I am glad that you have decided to join us. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the book or not, but it doesn't matter. We're going to go through the key takeaways for the book and summarize this. I will say she's got really great PDF attachment for this book that I think is very helpful. So if you do have the book and you have uh, read it, but take a few minutes and look at the PDFs that it's attached to it. If you did audiobook, if you have the hard copy book, then you already have that. Okay, let's get started. So, just wanted to remind everyone if you have been with NPA, you certainly know about the summit we did back in March. Just wanted to remind you that those replays are available. Go to our website, you'll see those there, and you will have access. You don't have to register for them, they're available. Through our website directly, as well as through the as well as through the YouTube site. So please do go ahead and feel free to jump onto that. Okay. The other thing I want just a quick reminder is our four-part series, Rewire Your Brain. That's available. We just finished that up. That series is really a deep dive into how neuroplasticity works, how you can manipulate it to help your recovery. We walk you through self-advocacy. We walk you through how to partner with your caregiver team, whether that's a physician, whether it's a caregiver, your family. We walk you through all of those steps and end with a discussion on what therapies are out there for your specific challenge so that you can do your own research and really give you a chart that will help you figure out your blueprint for recovery all on your own. So that's available. It's also on our YouTube site. So, as I mentioned, today's conversation is Good Anxiety with Dr. Wendy Suzuki, who was the author of that book. Upcoming, we have The Dopamine Nation, The Source, and Live Wired by David Eagleman. I did want to remind everyone, if you didn't see the note that we sent out, we're going to be moving to every other month. We had a lot of feedback that was ask us to extend the timeline for these discussions because people were having a hard time getting through the book within the 1 month time frame, and I did understand that because it was a lot to get through. So we will be moving that to every other month, and you should have gotten an updated meeting invite for that as well. If you didn't, please reach out. We'll make sure we get it addressed. Okay, so let's dig into the heart of the conversation. If you don't know Dr. Suzuki, she is an NYU professor. She's been really focused on anxiety, and her first book is about exercise and the effects of that on anxiety. Her work has really been focused around how to modulate anxiety. So she's done a lot of research studying how it works in the brain. And I would say her book is exceptionally well written and describing not only the research that it's been done on this, but how it anatomically works in the brain, which I thought was very refreshing and different. So it shows she understands not only the results of the research, but how it's working so that her tools can be refined to take advantage of those anatomical components as well. So her first book is Healthy Brain, Happy Life, as I mentioned, and it is a very good. If you're interested in this topic, I would suggest taking a look at that. If you don't know her on Instagram, take a look and go in and uh, follow on her on Instagram. Let me see here. It is yeah, her Instagram page is at Dr. Wendy Suzuki. She does a daily tip. It's pretty much every day, I think, on how to give and maximize the use of your brain. So, how to give your brain what it needs to be happy and healthy, and how to maximize the use of it. Okay, let me see. I got a couple of people coming in. Let me let these people in. Now we've got a really great crowd today. All right. Welcome, JP, Kathleen. I'm glad everyone has joined us. Okay, here we go. All right. So, the core idea of this book is that anxiety is a natural protective emotion that evolved for survival. And that through neuroplasticity, we can reframe it and harness it as good anxiety, turning it into six superpowers, where we're going to walk through all of those six superpowers and discuss how you manage them and how you use them, and how you harness your efforts on managing anxiety to create those six superpowers. But I think the key takeaway here is that anxiety is natural, and it is a something that you can reframe. I sort of mentioned already a little bit about what we loved about this book. It was very easy to read and actionable. I think the actionable piece is especially important here because you, as a reader, can step away and really take something from it that you can implement in your daily life. I think she shares a lot of really personal stories on her bouts with anxiety and how she's managed them and turned them and reframed them into something positive for her. And there's a lot of other stories here for not only adults, but children as well. So I got a lot out of it from that perspective. Anybody want to throw in the chat anything that they've gotten out of the book specifically? Let me know your thoughts. Okay. Oops, jumped ahead real quick. Okay, so my first key takeaway from this book was anxiety is a natural biological response. It's basically it's founded in your amygdala, which is the part of your brain that is your fight or flight, and your autonomic survival signal to detect threats and respond and react to those. So everyday anxiety is a natural part of life, and it's something that you can use to help you move your life forward and propel you to do the things that you want to do and take advantage of those things. You can reframe it through neuroplasticity. So, imaging, research, and evolutionary biology prove that it can be reframed. She shared a lot of research in there about how to reframe it, and we'll talk about that specifically. And it requires one of the foundational principles that it requires is this activist mindset. And I think that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that because if you can't create this activist mindset as your foundation and really get a good grip on that and how to do that, I think you do really have a hard time showing or moving to the other places that she asked you to go in this book. So I think that's a real important piece of it. So when you feel anxious, really you need to stop and ask yourself, what is this anxiety trying to tell me? What does it mean about my life? What's important about it? And she really suggests writing it down instead of just sitting there and thinking about that. And that's because that act of writing it down is taking action. You're moving on it and not just continuing to ruminate on it, which I think is a real important part of her practice. So, pro tip, when you feel anxious, stop, give yourself a pause, don't ignore it, face it, and say, okay, what's happening? Why am I having this anxiety? And what does it mean? Okay, so I did want to draw a distinction here between um, everyday anxiety and then anxiety disorders. I think this is a real important part of understanding what she's talking about in the book because If you, if you're thinking about PTSD, if you're thinking about um, oh, uh, uh, obsessive compulsive disorder, there are a lot of other challenges that out there that are in the not considered everyday anxiety. It's that anxiety disorder component. So I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're talking about today. So her actionable suggestions and items are really around this everyday anxiety. And in the book, she has a good list of how to determine whether something's everyday anxiety or this anxiety disorder. So take a look at that if you do have the book and you're trying to put this into the right perspective. So, I really thought this was a fantastic takeaway for everyone. It's like when that anxiety hits you, you stop and say, okay, let me figure out how to turn this worry into an action list. So break that worry down into small dosable steps and schedule the first one immediately. So what she's trying to do here is really stop this worry looping. I know if you've got anxiety, you know what worry looping is, but if you don't, in general, it's when a concern just keeps resurfacing in your mind and it's often accompanied by thoughts of like the worst possible outcome, catastrophizing, if you will. Oh, if this doesn't happen, so and so is going to happen. And you get stuck, right, in that thought of what if this happens? What is that gonna mean for me? It's gonna cause the worst thing that can possibly happen. And so that cycle develops, it creates a loop in your mind, and you really get stuck and unable to move forward. So her way of breaking that cycle is to turn that worry into an action list. So, okay, XYZ is going to happen. It may happen. We don't know if it's going to happen, but it may happen. And what can I do about it? So then if you do this, you feel empowered and you don't feel like you're out of control. You are in control of it. The other thing I thought about this when I read it, and she does mention this in the book, is if you combine this action list with the visualization technique, she talks about it in the book, but if you guys remember our discussion back from Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, he talked a lot about visualization. So, how to visualize yourself succeeding at something. If you've got a specific worry, visualize yourself with the positive outcome of that worry. So combining that visualization, which we know is 70%, you get 70% of the physical benefits if it's a movement-based activity. There haven't been any real studies that talk about what the effectiveness of that visualization is from an anxiety standpoint that I can come up with, but it does stand to reason that it would help because you're leveraging all of that positive emotion. So I think that I really wanted to point this as an action plan out for you. If you're having some challenges that you can't seem to break that habit about, stop, take an action list, visualize what the positive outcome would be, and then write down the steps it would take to get to that positive outcome. Has anybody ever tried this in the chat? If you had, I would love to hear about it. Just checking to see here if anybody's going to put anything in there. Anybody have any specific worries that you'd like to share, and then we can walk through what an action list would look like for that. Okay, if you do, just drop it in and we'll come back to it. Okay. So, takeaway 3 for this book is how to create an activist mindset. As I said earlier, I think it's extremely important to understand this concept because I think it's really at the root of everything she's talking about. So, um, the key point about an activist mindset is that it's the conscious and learnable choice to stop being passive about anxiety and instead actively reframe it. So, For example, let's say I'm worried my son's not going to get a job after college and he's going to be stuck living in my basement, which was one of the examples that they talked about in the book discussion. And what is that going to mean for him? What is it going to mean for my family? Well, I actually took the time to go through and do exactly what she said. So I wrote out a list of what the action steps could be for that. Okay, I can help him brainstorm how to get a job. I can help him brainstorm friends and connections he could go and talk to network. And I can give him some rules around how we can set up what happens after college so that I'm limiting my anxiety around it. And that by taking that and looking at what the positives of that situation could be, I'm creating an activist mindset. So I'm not just sitting here worrying, I'm doing the steps that's necessary to reframe that. And then the other piece of this is looking at the positive outcomes of that. So it would be great to have my son live with me for a while. I could have him do this, that, and the other. I could do some of the things we never got to do before he left to go to college. We could go on a trip together. So putting positive aspects around that and choosing not to focus on the negative, but to focus on the positive and then take actions around that. So I think that I wrote down these 4 tips for how to create an activist mindset. And this first one here is notice the anxiety without judgment. And I think this is exceptionally important, right? Because if you're feeling negative, and we've talked about this on almost every discussion around neuroplasticity, is that if you have a negative mindset, your brain doesn't work well. You can't have that creativity that comes with which is needed actually for creating these lists and really thinking about how you move forward. So don't judge yourself. Don't give you those negative thoughts. And Wendy actually has a really great interview with Dr. Huberman that I put the link in here at the end of our session. I really would suggest you go back and look at that. She dives into the impact of those negative emotions quite a bit on that discussion with Andrew Huberman. It's a short little video you can watch. Step number 2, choose the activist path. Decide, I will not let this control me. I will use it. And that is what I just sort of demonstrated by making that list and the example that I shared. Reframe the situation. How can it be an opportunity instead of a problem? Let's look at how we can use this to our advantage. If we're talking about anxiety specifically, how can I use that anxiety to propel me forward? Can I use my need to, or my worry about doing a presentation to help fuel my work on it so that I have the motivation to get it just right, to schedule some time with a friend to practice, to schedule some time with another person to evaluate the content that's in there. So using it as an opportunity to improve rather than to weigh you down. And this last piece is act immediately. Use your worry to create the action list, and within 30 to 60 seconds, do one of those things. So, what's key to being able to do something immediate is to break this down into small steps, right? And do that visualization with it. So, you want to visualize the outcome, you want to break it down into small steps so that you can create some wins and have some positive feedback and immediately on that. Any questions on this slide and on an activist mindset? No? Okay. All right. Our next takeaway is back around these superpowers. So one of the big premises around her book is if you properly channel anxiety, then you can use it to create these 6 powerful superpowers. And that's greater resilience, higher performance, optimized mindset, increased focus and productivity, enhanced social intelligence, and improved creativity. So I want to dig into each of these a little bit further. Okay. So, greater resilience. What is resilience? Resilience is the ability to bounce back, right? So, if you've had a setback, you've got something going on that's causing you a lot of stress, how do you get over that hurdle? Do you have the resilience to move yourself forward? And she talks about how you can use that anxiety and to build emotional and physical toughness by facing it head on, right? So, kind of what we talked about, and like turning that worry into an action list. And when you feel anxiety coming on, you stop, take a minute, and address it instead of trying to run from it and escape the pressure and discomfort that comes with that. So, what is that anxiety telling you? And if you get into the habit of doing that, then you just recover faster from these setbacks. Um, she did talk a little bit about how that strengthens the brain and body connection, that system, right? So physically, you if you are lower your anxiety, you lower the cortisol, you sleep better, you have a physical response that is enhanced versus I guess decreased if you are able to face that and move forward. And it becomes a source of long-term strength and adaptability. You realize and recognize that you can take that anxiety and you can use it for good. And that gives you this greater resilience and ability to bounce back because you've demonstrated that you've done it before. So a lot of her conversation around higher performance, which is the second superpower, was the example she shared was her desire to get tenure and how that created a lot of stress for her. And she had to really reframe that stress into something positive and taking that nervous energy and drive to focus it into something instead of just being letting it overwhelm you, using that and transforming it into something else. And that then helps you prepare thoroughly and execute at a higher level. So it's that activist mindset that says, I'm not going to let this um, cause me to step back. I'm not going to let it detract me from accomplishing my goals. In fact, I'm going to use it to move forward. And she had another couple of examples in here about CEOs who had gotten to the point where they were just having very high anxiety. And they then were able to take it and reframe it and use it to and not only improve the quality of what they were doing, it actually excelled them. This was an entrepreneur, I believe, if I recall that correctly, where he had been spinning out companies, moving companies forward. I think he was managing like six companies at one time. And he had just gotten to the point where he couldn't go to meetings. He was having severe stress. And by reframing it, he was able to not only return back, but to improve his work because he used that action list to chart out what he needs to do to remove that anxiety. And then he followed that plan. So the next one here is an optimized mindset. And I think we really did talk through that just there. I think the thing I really liked about this is, and maybe worth mentioning a little bit more, is this problem solving mindset that comes with this, or skill really. By doing this and taking this anxiety and flipping it on its head and really analyzing what's causing the anxiety and tuning into when you have that anxiety and what it means, stopping to pause and think about it, you really do promote a problem solving mindset, and you build that skill as you go through the process over time, and you just get better at problem solving. So increased focus and productivity. Um, it does produce, it boosts your output and flow once it's reframed because you feel empowered and enhance social intelligence. She spent a lot of time talking about this social intelligence piece at the end of the book, really. and how if you use and stop and listen to that anxiety in yourself and understand what's happening, it gives you greater empathy and emotional awareness, which enhances your overall social intelligence. And she went into a discussion about how emotional intelligence and this social awareness really is a much greater measure for intellectual capability and success overall. And so she felt like by tuning into yourself and enhancing that empathy, you boost your emotional quotient, your EQ, which then sets you up for overall success. So stopping and listening to what's that cause of stress in your specific life, and what does it mean for you? And this last one on improved creativity, I honestly, this was the one that I was surprised about most. And so I spent a lot of time really thinking about that. But it does make sense, right? If you're anxious about something and you're stressed, it does limit your ability to problem solve and think freely and to get into the flow of the work that you're doing. So she did talk a lot about how important the management of anxiety was for reaching that flow state. And that flow state is really kind of where everybody excels and where the peak of that is, right? So uh, the the chart she showed was there's anxiety, and it gets to the top. If you know a typical bell curve, right, you're at the top before it tips over and becomes bad anxiety, and at the top where those two meet is where that optimal creativity exists, where that flow state exists. And if you can get to where you're a fine-tuned machine and being able to reframe that anxiety and stop it from tipping over into good anxiety, but use it just enough to fuel you and push you forward, you can really attain that flow state. And she talked about that in doing her research and how she, after she got control of her anxiety, and she got control of it through exercise, meditation, and limiting her alcohol, uh, that she really was able to get into a flow state with her research, which allowed her to get her book done, which she was struggling with, and really enjoy the process more so than just kind of pushing through. She talked about the joy of it overall and how that enhanced her creativity. So you've got to find that sweet spot between discomfort and pressure to be able to get into that flow state, which is where that creativity is. And I think that sort of it summarizes it well. Any questions on the superpowers about how to use anxiety to get to those? Okay. So we've got two, really, this is one of the last takeaways for this conversation, and it is her to outside of exercise, which she did talk a lot about in this book as well, but her first book was really on the benefits of exercise. So she referred to that quite a bit. And what she brought into this from a technique standpoint was breath work. That was new. And then she had really fine-tuned how much movement is needed. And if you go and listen to that conversation she had with Andrew Huberman, she really talks about the research around that and how you really only need 10 minutes to boost your hippocampus and get that creativity flowing, to enhance your memory, to be able to improve your focus, and to get control of that anxiety. So that's one of the first things she recommends is take a walk. If you're feeling that anxiety, take a walk, think about what that anxiety means, face it head on and try to figure out what your action plan is going to be. She did talk a good bit, and we've mentioned it before, about how that exercise works anatomically, the release of BDNF, not only through your muscles, but through your liver and all throughout your body, which it fuels your brain. That's your brain's fuel for moving. And I do really, I think Dr. Suzuki is just, quite frankly, adorable in the way that she explains everything. She's so joyful in how she talks, and the way she describes this was a neurochemical bubble bath. So if you exercise every day and you do the breath work and your meditation, you're constantly immersing your brain in this neurochemical bubble bath that calms it, makes it feel good, and refuels it through the BDNF, but also through like the dopamine, acetylcholine, et cetera. So it's the release of those neurochemicals that you need to be happy and in a good mood, to fight depression, and to be able to control that anxiety. So that 5 to 10 minute walk, you really need that will help you get control of it. Just to summarize what she believes on exercise, though, is you need that 30 to 45 minutes 3 times a week or more to be able to put yourself in an optimum state to manage not only anxiety, but to really maximize the effectiveness and productivity of your brain overall. The other thing that she mentioned here was the use of breath work. And, if you're, especially as an immediate tool for controlling your anxiety, she gave these two different types here, which are the 4-7-8 breathing and then the box breathing, which is, just a different way of doing that slow breathing. So to calm yourself down and lower that cortisol. And it just stops the amygdala activity. That's the portion again in your brain, or the component of your brain, which is associated with emotion and that fight or flight response. And that will help you instantaneously get control of it and get perspective of it. So, I thought, again, although these seem very simple and you've heard it probably many, many times, I did take the time to try this 4-7-8 breathing, which I had not done before. And I did like it because the exhale is 8, and you have to really slow yourself down to think about that. And I think it's not just the breathing, but it's the counting that you do through that too. It's a refocusing of where your mental energy is, was very helpful. So I did really like the 4-7-8 because it forced me to slow down a little bit more. And I think that was really it. I would love for anybody to share if they've got any worries, anything that they'd like to discuss. If we want to take a few minutes and try to put together an action list for that, or if you want to take a few minutes and do it for yourself. I did want to encourage you to take a look at the questionnaires. I couldn't post the questionnaires here without breaking some copyright laws, but they are included in the book. And they are really very good tools about how to personalize your anxiety. So she goes through, lists a series of questions that help you analyze the source of your anxiety. So what triggers it? How do you cope with it? And and how to analyze that, and what things work for your anxiety. And then she also helps you set a baseline for measuring your anxiety. So she did talk a lot about also not comparing your baseline anxiety to anyone else's anxiety. So it's yours personal, because someone else's baseline may be higher or lower. And you really need to understand what that baseline is to help you figure out what the triggers are and what the good coping strategies would be for you. So if you do have the book, take a few minutes and look at those questionnaires. If you're really struggling with everyday anxiety, then I think they would be very helpful. I've got the link here also for the podcast. And if this is something you're more interested in learning about, if you're really struggling with anxiety or somebody you know in your life, I would also recommend her book, Happy Brain, Happy Life. While she did focus a lot on the exercise research that she did for that book, there's a ton more of actionable tools in there, I guess, that will help you manage that anxiety through exercise, and just other helpful hints as well. And so I think really the takeaway from all of this is that you can learn to make your anxiety work for you. Don't be afraid to face it head on. so that you can get control of it. And just knowing that you have control over it in itself is a big step forward. We talk a lot about that in our Rewire Your Brain series. Of how knowing that neuroplasticity is there as a tool, knowing that the research says you can reframe your anxiety, which was proven through imaging, through research, and through the discovery of neuroplasticity. And so that is very empowering. You do have the ability to control it. You just have to figure out how to do it and what works for you. So I hope some of these tips that we've shared today have been helpful and you can use those and incorporate them into your life. And I think that is it for the discussion on this book. So just another quick reminder about the replays that are available. And then our next book, again, note the date on this, is July 14th. So for some of those who may have joined a little bit late, we're moving our book discussions to every other month to give people a chance to read the book and get caught up, which is by request from so many people. And the next discussion is going to be this Dopamine Nation book, which by Dr. Lemke. And I am very much looking forward to this. So if you've got teenagers in your house who are always on your phone, or find yourself like I do, having to take phone breaks because I enjoy the Instagram or the TikTok a little bit too much, and really just creates an addictive type behavior. And so I have to take a break. And I noticed personally that my ability to focus is related to that. And so I'm very much looking forward to this book to help me figure out how to control that better myself. And that is it, everyone. Any questions or any comments? If not, you've got a good bit of your lunch hour left. You can go and enjoy that. And we'll look forward to seeing you on July the 14th. Okay, thank you.
Sherry,
Yeah, hi.
hi. I don't know if you can see me.
I can see you. Yeah, you're
Okay.
Kathleen. Hello.
Yes. I just read something today that said if it excites you and scares you at the same time, you should probably do it.
I love that. That is great advice, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Have you tried it?
Well, we created a new graduate school that was both scary and exciting at the same time. So, I'm a co-founder and a founding faculty member.
Well, fantastic. Congratulations. Where's your
Thank
program?
you. In Massachusetts,
Okay, what's it on?
human and organizational development with
Okay,
neuroscience and learning.
fantastic. Well, I would love to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd love to chat with you about it. Can I make an
Yeah, well,
appointment with you?
yeah, let's chat here in a few minutes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think that your thought on anything that excites you and scares you is a perfect. I was just trying to think if there was something in my experience that I had that would qualify for that I have not been able to do. Well, I will say we are starting a podcast in August. The Neuroplasticity Alliance is doing that, and I will say that qualifies. So I'm both very excited about it and a little bit nervous about the challenge as well.
Excellent.
Trying to put it all together. Riding a roller coaster. Thank you, JP. Yeah. Do you ride roller coasters, JP? Are you a big fan of those?
Not terribly, no. I mean, but I do enjoy them to a point. It's kind of that what you're talking about. Like there's that point that's fun, and then there's the point that you're like, nope, I'm done now. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Um,
I used to love roller coasters and now I'm not so sure.
right. I think that's where I'm at. When my body was younger, it handled it much better.
Hmm. I know. Yeah. Well, thanks, Kim. I hope you will join the podcast. We're pulling our lineup together. It's going to be a good mix of lived experience. So, people who have recovered using neuroplasticity and new technologies and therapies, and physicians who are having some success, and they're walking us through how they're doing it and what they're doing it to make it work. So I'm very excited about it. It will be sort of a continuation of the summit we did back in March. But it's going to, and we're going to switch our summit going forward so that it's a more panel oriented format, and use the podcast for these individual conversations, which I think will be really helpful. We're going to switch up the summit a little bit, and the reason I think it's going to be helpful is because we part of what NPA's mission to do is to not only help individuals, right, but to change the ecosystem to make sure that physicians out there understand what we're doing, so that the payers and the inventors keep in mind the process that's needed to be reimbursed, and make sure that individuals who need these most can afford them and get access to them. So we're hoping to use our summit, our annual summit, and to address that a little bit in more detail. Oh, great. Thanks, Kim. I'm glad you were able to join. Well, we ended our conversation early today. I intentionally left it a little bit light because I actually thought there might be a little more conversation around the six superpowers. When I first read about those superpowers and thinking, I was like, well, that sounds a little bit, difficult. How do you turn this very negative, well, as we all associate it with to be so negative, anxiety, right? It's such a negative thing. It's talked about how oh, I've got anxiety around this, that, and the other. And so when you think about that and say, hey, I'm thankful for my anxiety because it enables me to create and foster these six superpowers, which is back to that activist mindset she suggests. It does reframe it and make you think a good bit about how to uh how to do that. And her yeah, the resilience piece of those, like I said, the creativity, like, and improved creativity was probably the one that stuck with me the most, or unexpected. But I would say the enhanced social intelligence also was something very unexpected, because it improves that empathy and gives you the ability to connect if you're in touch with it, in tune with it. And as usual, I will say it keeps bringing me back to this connection between the mind and the body. There seems like everything we read is increases and enhances that, how important that connection between the mind and body really are. And I if you are following us and have heard our conversations and progression of this discussion, it is hard not to see how that happens. And if you did join the summit and happen to see Dr. Brennan Spiegel's conversation around how virtual reality is being used to minimize pain and treat chronic pain, uh, he explained it so well, how the visualization that you're seeing through that virtual reality completely flips the switch on pain, cutting off that loop of pain. And that was something else. I actually meant to bring that up. How flipping the switch on anxiety, like you're saying here, JP, you're flipping the switch on that anxiety, and the same thing is happening with pain. You're flipping the switch. So it's a very mental process, right? The power of your brain to control what your body feels. And it works almost the exact same way for the pain as it does for the anxiety. So I did pull out my son's virtual reality, the Oculus headset that he had gotten from Meta several Christmases ago, and pulled it out. And and I should also clarify too, because I did talk about my son living in the basement, which is not the case at all. He's only a sophomore in college, so that wasn't a real worry. But it does cross your mind. He made good grades this semester, and it's gonna go back next year. Uh, Okay, I think that is it. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to close out our call and I will look for you guys on July 14th. Thank you so much. Uh, Kathleen, why don't
Yes.
let me send you a chat real quick. Actually, I have
Okay.
your email. Let me reach out, okay?
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Did you want to talk today? Were you still
Um,
available?
yeah, why don't we talk here just in a few seconds?
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
I'll
bye-bye.
look for that. Thank you.
You're welcome.